My name is Lieutenant Patrick Welch. I am the lieutenant over the Violent Crimes Detective Division here at the High Point Police Department. Not to reiterate the timeline, I think most of that has been pretty well established. I do want to say that the investigation is moving forward very well and expeditiously. We have been in contact with the affected family and they are cooperating with us fully. And as the chief said, there is some information that we are going to hold back. That's just to protect the integrity of the investigation. But at this time, I am at a point where we can announce that the offender and one of the deceased, Robert Jeffrey Creighton, is being looked at as the primary person who committed this act. We will also release, and I think it's been put out in the updated press release, his wife, Athalia Creighton, age 46, and one of the children, Cassine Creighton, age 18. At this point, I will try to answer any questions that you may have. We can go from there. Yes.
The press release said that 2 other people inside the home escaped. Were they related to the victims?
That is correct. We aren't going to release their names at this time. 2 surviving victims did escape the residence. One of them is a direct relation and the other was an acquaintance. Yes, ma'am.
Can you release as to how they were murdered? Was this gunshot, stabbing, strangulation? Or...
Yes, I can release that the deceased did die of gunfire. Yes, sir.
Did the kids go to Rexdale?
I'm going to defer those questions to Guilford County Schools. I know that we have released some information to them so that they can have grief counselors in place to help the affected student bodies. Yes, sir.
So the 2 kids ran out of the house around 7 a.m., but do you know what time the incident actually occurred? Did they find it when they woke up? Did it happen a long time before that, or did it happen?
It happened concurrently around the same time. When they exited the house, part of the investigation that we're going to be looking into is the timeline of occurrences that happened inside the house. But the time that they exited the house and sought help from neighbors, it was all occurring around that same time. You again, ma'am.
Do you possibly know what led up to this, why it transpired?
No, and that's going to be a piece of the investigation, and I've expressed this to the family as we may never know why. What goes through the hearts and minds of a person that would do this sometimes dies with them, but we don't have any indication right now as to the why, but that's part of what we're looking at. You would think.
Did Robert have any known mental health issues?
We have information from the family that he was suffering with some mental illness. We responded to the house in January of last year where he was served an involuntary commitment. We are still looking into past involvements. I can't speak to as the reasoning under the involuntary commitment, but we do believe that it was taken out by the family and we served those papers. Yes, sir.
Did Robert have the gun legally?
We don't know all that yet. We're still tracing the firearm that was recovered from the scene. We're still looking at that. Paul.
Patrick, I have 2 questions. One, can you release what type of gun it was? Was it a handgun, rifle?
It's just a gun at this point.
And how many calls for service had you had over so many years to that residence?
So just a quick search of that address. We responded to the IVC in January of 2022. There was a domestic related call in December of 2019 that there just appeared to have been an argument with no assault. And then January 30th of 2014, there was an alleged assault again, but no PC for an arrest. And that's just a quick search that we've done.
So 4 calls for service?
I have, so on the 3rd of January 2022 is the day we served the IVC paperwork. On the 2nd, there was a medical related call that's in our CAD system that we believe probably predicated the involuntary commitment the next day. You had your hand up first, I believe.
I was going to ask, do you guys know if he had any history of being violent that the living family may have shared with you?
On behalf of Mr. Creighton, we They have not told us any information that he was necessarily a violent person on a daily basis. The only information that we have up to this point is that he was suffering with some mental illness. And we have an idea of what he was suffering with, but we're gonna, out of respect for families, we're gonna just hold back on some of that for right now. Paul, again, I think you had your hand up first.
Had he ever been arrested by police or any other law enforcement that you know of, sir?
Not that we were aware of. We've really only begun to scratch the surface of looking into everyone's history.
Yes, sir.
It's a possibility, but I don't have that information at this time. I don't believe he was.
Thank you, sir.
Red coat.
When officers got to the house, where were the victims found?
So that's another piece of information that we're going to withhold. It's the actual layout of the home and where the victims were. We are still investigating. It still is an active investigation, and it's all in the spirit of being thorough. So right now, we're just going to withhold that in the pink.
You said that one of the individuals that was able to get out, do you know if they were a juvenile?
The two that did escape are both adults.
When you were called, when the officers were called to the home in December and January, was it to the same exact address?
Yes.
And let's take out 2 more questions for the interest of time.
In the back.
And in 2019 and 14, were those at the same address you referenced?
Yes, sir.
Mossy Meadow?
Yes, sir.
The chief mentioned that the officers are getting some assistance due to the traumatic nature of this. I'm just curious as to, do you know, are the people who were able to flee from the house also getting assistance? Or how important that is?
We have offered any assistance we can in that respect. They have a very large extended family who has come in from out of town, and to my knowledge, they are being very supportive of the 2 survivors that were affected by it. To my knowledge, they have not sought any assistance from us directly, but I feel confident that the family as a whole is looking after their best interests.
And we'll make this the last one.
And you mentioned not releasing the names. Can you release the ages?
Of the survivors? Yes, they are 22 and 25.
Okay. Can you also release the ages of the juveniles who were deceased?
Sure. We have a 10-year-old and a 16-year-old.
I think that's in the media releases.
It is, yes. And that probably came out while you were driving as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all. As Lieutenant Welch said, he's released a lot of what he can right now, but if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me and I'll try to help you.
One more question, how are the officers doing? I know you spoke with them a little bit, but how are the officers doing?
Yeah, I'd love to speak on that. Our officers are doing well. We have a peer support team here at the police department who is looking after those that were affected. A lot of officers responded to this scene. A lot of officers were impacted by this. We called in extra duty people, but we are looking after each other, and by all accounts, everybody seems to be doing very well.